All right, everybody. Welcome to the stream today. Um, you can probably hear in my voice that I'm starting to lose my voice. So I apologize if if I'm clearing my voice a lot today or things like that. This week, my oldest daughter started competition season, um, and so on Tuesday they performed at a girls' basketball game. Um, and they performed one of the dances that they competed yesterday. On Thursday, they also performed at a boys' basketball game, and then uh, yesterday they went and competed. So I spent most of the evening cheering to the point where my throat hurt pretty bad last night. I was worried I wouldn't be able to stream. Um, my throat doesn't hurt as bad, but um, I'm gonna be aware of my voice. I don't want to lose my voice. Um, and so um, but it was a good evening, a lot of fun. It's always fun to go watch. My both of my daughters are competitive dancers, and I love watching both of them go do things that they've spent so much time working on, and then just watch the competitive look on their face. Don Draper voice. Yeah. Um, so yeah, just yelling and screaming is very hard on the vocal cords. But they did excellent last night. Um, a lot of fun to watch, and um, I don't know, I'm just very excited for them for this season. They've been working really, really hard. Uh, she puts in how many hours is it right now? It's like around 20 hours a week, before and after school, um, just practicing and getting ready for these dance competitions. So, it's like a part-time job on top of school. So, uh, all right, let's see, where are we? But that's what was going on this week. Competition season. I often don't know when they're dancing until the day of, even sometimes very, very close to when they're actually going to start dancing. The chat feed isn't up. You are right. Okay, I forgot to swap over. Um, the chat feed should show up soon. Um, right. I mean, I can test it really quick. Yep. So it'll start to show up. I hadn't swapped over. I just jumped into things. Starting to feel my voice. We may only go for an hour today. I just want to be really careful with my voice. Um, it can get pretty painful if you're not, like, it's crazy how much your throat can hurt just from talking. So, anyway, the pre-stream stuff. We went in. Well, we went in and we upgraded everything. So if we take a look, all that's left, um, is just the ESLint stuff. Man, that YouTube one took a while to come through. Um, Interesting. But anyway, the ESLint is all we've got left. After we finish what we're doing now, I actually want to upgrade to ESLint 9. I put together a project recently that had ESLint 9 in it, and I really enjoyed it. Um, so um, we've got that. Um, Also, before the stream, I upgraded WebStorm. Hopefully, you're having better experiences with that, Michael. But let's take a look at this. Um, uh, have not used their. I'm curious. I'm curious how this works um with Copilot enabled. So we'll see what happens. Um, oh, oh. So I didn't have the I didn't have the JetBrains AI stuff turned on. So interesting. And it wants me to update that plugin right now. We'll take a look. And just see how that goes. Really, I believe we got the solver all finished. The last thing we were on was the keyboard navigation. And then once we had keyboard navigation done, um, then we were ready to actually start testing. Um, and our keyboard navigation really only consists of uh, these cells, right? Or not cells. I've got cells on the brain. Hey, Marcus, welcome to the stream. It's good to see you, man. Um, and same to you, Michael. Thanks for showing up, and everybody else who's here. Um, I I debated because my voice is so weak today, and just going out. I really debated. Um, I've been enjoying. Um, I've been enjoying Factorial a lot, and I've been experimenting with some Factorio um, circuits, um, circuit conditions, and things like that to control like train stations or boxes or things like that. So I really debated um, investigating a couple of circuits that I want to build that I've seen people using, but I don't. I I enjoy figuring out how to do things, um, and so there's some circuits that I want to build. I really debated doing that today to see if it would rest my voice a bit. I did have a lot of fun sharing. Um, it was a lot of fun, and actually, you can probably see my T-shirt is so with Drill Team in Utah, the teams compete 3 events. And so the first event last night was what they call the military event because Drill Team as a dance competition um, comes from um, comes from military drills. Um, and so, well, actually, there's 4 events. So military is the first event, and military is about precision, formations, strength, and then they do it all to the music, and um, it's all very impressive and a lot of fun to watch. But it's different than most dance styles. On Tuesday night, they performed their military routine at the girls' basketball game. And it was funny to hear the comments from the audience because during like um, the military, the facial expressions they make are very important, and they're supposed to be like angry, you know, ferocious. They have certain facials that they make, and they actually go through and they sit across from another member on the team, and they look at each other and they practice making their facial expressions they're supposed to make during the dance as the music's playing, and they watch each other and they correct each other's facial expressions. But the comments from the audience were kind of hilarious because, um, like my wife she was over away from where my daughter and I were sitting, because she was recording and she wanted a more central view. And as she was leaving where she was recording the dance from, she's like, I heard a couple of guys talking, and they're like, man, I really hope those girls enjoyed that dance because from my point of view, it looks like they were pissed off, right? Um, and she's like, they're supposed to look that way. Hey, Ole, how's it going? Good to see you. That was military's first, and they're typically about a 3 to 4 minute dance, and we're yelling as loud as we can to help give them energy. And then the next one after that is what they call a dance routine, and it's closer to like a classic dance routine. If any of you guys out there are dance dads, what like a classic lyrical dance routine is. If you don't, um, they're typically slower songs, and dance, like lyrical, is more about body positioning and the facial expressions that you make match the music and tone of the dance. Um, it's a lot of like ballet comes into it too, straight lines, clean lines. Those are lyrical dances. And then the final one is the reason that I've got this shirt. They do what they call a show routine. With a show routine, the entire team goes all out. I mean, they do full costumes, and they've got makeup on and costumes on, and they're dancing. And this year, their um, their show routine is based on Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. I haven't seen Emperor's New Groove, so I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. Um, but apparently she's a horrible person. And so, they've got um, the dance routine is based on the hip hop style. Um, and so we've got um, it's one of my favorite parts of the competition, I'll admit. Um, but they've got like Toxic from Britney Spears in there because apparently this lady uses poison, and just different songs that they cut together with hip hop backing and tracks and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Um, One of my favorites from last night, obviously my daughter's is my favorite, but one of my other favorites from last night was another team, and their dance routine was focused on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Um, so they all came out in like the old '90s hip hop um, get up. They had on the yellow and blue hat turned sideways, like Will Smith does in the intro. Um, and it was amazing to just watch these girls as they were out there dancing, and whoever cut their music together was really, really good because they came out there and they started dancing to like some old school '90s hip hop. And then it cut into using still the same beat and music from the hip hop track that they were doing before, but they overlaid the start the Fresh Prince of Bel Air and intro music or rap over the top of it. So you had Will Smith rapping over the top of like OPP, um, and then it would cut. It would play a little bit of that, and they'd be doing the classic dances, and then they cut into like MC Hammer. So these girls were doing like the old MC Hammer dances. It cut into Baby Got Back. I mean, you can't do '90s hip hop without, some Sir Mix-a-Lot in there. And it was awesome. There was Tupac, there was a little bit of NWA, there was oh, who else was in there? There was Dre, um, there was Snoop. I mean, there's just classic '90s hip hop. It was a lot of fun. Um, and I guess that's one of the things that I love hip hop, and so um, I was it was so much fun. Like classic '90s hip hop is like the time when I was in high school. I graduated in '95, um, and so like the 90s are like the hip hop era that I grew up on. Like I love a lot of the modern hip hop stuff too that's going on. Um, and a lot of the other dances had modern hip hop. Um, the team, um, there are a few teams that are just amazing. The Farmington team last night was just amazing across the board. I have to give them props. Those girls were incredible. Their choreography was incredible. But their theme was Jack Sparrow. So the girls were all dressed in pirate outfits. You could tell they were Jack Sparrow as they came on just by um, part of what they're judged on is how they enter and leave. And so they're supposed to be in formation. They're supposed to be marching in formation, but these girls had like the Jack Sparrow swagger as they were marching in formation, and so you knew exactly who they were as they were coming on. And they had like Kendrick Lamar, and um, they had Missy Elliott in there, um, and who else was in there? So a lot of Eminem. Um, just a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Especially if you love hip hop, um, and love hip hop dance styles, which I do. And it was just a lot of fun to watch. I'll have to get some recordings from my wife, and maybe I'll show off, you know, some of the recordings from like my daughter's team, and then um, the Jack Sparrow dance was so good that at the end of it, um, I turned to my wife and I was like, "Let's go home. They just won." I was like, "What the hell did I just watch?" It was incredible. They just had like parts of the dance where there was one part in the dance where all the girls in the front dropped into the splits, and as they dropped into the splits, all the girls in the back did a back tuck, um, just standing back tuck in the middle of the dance, and it was just perfectly timed. They all landed at the same time, and it just, you had all this different movement, and it was really weird, really well done. So yeah, 90s hip hop is fun, um, right? I'm glad we're getting out of the mumble rappers. I will tell you that. Mumble rap has had its time. I'm glad we're getting out of that, and getting back into a lot more clean stuff. I love I love the stuff that Eminem is doing right now. Like Houdini is amazing, um, just as a song, but also from a theatrical point of view. Um, because um, if you go back and you look at like Eminem's Slim Shady era, right? Um, and um, you com you compare Houdini to the original video that it was based on, right? The Guess Who's Back, Shady's back, right? Those two videos fairly closely shot for shot, very, very similar, with some significant differences, right? But then having Shady as part of the Houdini song um, was just genius. And showing how the industry has changed Eminem, and like cancel culture has caused problems, and just I don't know. I really am I've been a big fan of Eminem for a long time, but just the stuff he's doing now has been a lot of fun. So yeah, not video games today. Today we're talking hip hop, right? And that's another rabbit hole. Like sometimes when I just don't want to do programming or stuff like that, um, I love watching beatboxing. Um, and some of my favorite beatboxing are the loop station artists. Um, so there's an amazing beatboxer out of Japan, um, who oh, I'm brain dead right now. I'm all over the place, and I nerd snipe myself. Um, um, man, I'll have to find his name. Um, really incredible. He does, I mean, with loop stations and stuff, he's got videos up there of him doing like Mario Kart music and where he does um, all of the instrumentals through sounds he makes in his throat or nose. Um, he also does like Super Mario Brothers music, but he also he's just fun to watch when he competes. There's another beatboxer um, who got up there. This is one of my absolute favorite beatbox videos, and um, he does Billie Jean from Michael Jackson um, on a loop station. But the way he does it is he builds it up and layers it over the top of itself. Um, but you don't know what he's doing because the way he does it, he actually does it so that until he plays the loop in reverse, you don't recognize the song. So he's up there building this pretty sweet beatbox stuff going on, and everybody's like, okay, this is cool. Um, and then towards the end of the routine, he pulls out like a fedora, puts it on, does the classic Michael Jackson, tee hee, and then turns his loop station so that it's playing in reverse. And suddenly you're getting the classic Billie Jean bass line. You're getting the classic um, Billie Jean melody, and the beat all matches. But he did it all in reverse until he flipped. Like it's mind blowing what some of these guys can do, um, and just the thought process to get into something like that. So I watch I watch loop station beatboxing. I love it. Um, and then Harry Mack. You guys have probably all seen Harry Mack. Harry Mack's fun to watch. And then there's a guy called Black Pegasus who does reaction videos and stuff. Um, and if you guys like 90s hip hop and modern hip hop, um, there's this group um, that I was introduced to by Black Pegasus called Pete and Baz. Um, and they're this UK hip hop group. Um, but man, let me find Pete and Baz for you guys. Um, yeah. So these are the guys. Um, it's these 80-year-old guys. You know what? Let's. I'm way off topic today, but this is crazy. Um, so this is Pete and Baz. Um, and it, oh, come on. I'm not gonna turn this on for the ads. I'll turn on the sound after the ads if it's gonna play. I skip this. There we go. I'm not gonna play too much of this, but these guys are incredible.
Banging on the chick cause I'm a gangster bitch. I'm gang banging on the strip on some gangster shit. Hammer in the truck and I can bang this clip. And if you want to test us, I let the raptor rip. Wrapped up, get bagging. The slacks ain't sagging. The suit stay pressed while the boys go grab him. The clock keep ticking, the block keep trapping. This one phone call.
So I'm not gonna play too much of these guys. You guys should go down that rabbit hole. These guys are 80-year-old hip hop, right? Just incredibly fun to watch. Um, and um, I don't want to play too much because I don't want content strikes or things like that. Um, but they have flow and the internal rhyme schemes and structures of their rhymes are incredible. Um, if you guys want to watch, like, Black Pegasus is well known in the hip hop world, and so he'll bring on like well known hip hop artists. And the way I was introduced to these guys is he blindfolded a couple of people and had them listen to the song, and then he would stop it and ask them, what do you think, right? Like, tell me what you think of the rhyme scheme. Tell me, right? And you've got famous hip hop artists who are like, yeah, the rhyme scheme's fresh. These guys obviously know what they're doing. Their flow is good. He's like, can you tell me anything about the artists? And most of them are like, oh man, they've got good flow. There's something about their voice, like the textures and stuff, but man, and so then he unblindfolds them and then plays that intro that I just showed you. And without failure, everybody is floored that you've got these 80-year-old guys. And they started, I think, in 2017. So they're legit. Like, you can go and you can see that they've got concerts and stuff. I had no idea who they were until recently, and like I love their flow. That gangsta shit song is it's one of my favorites. And they've got another song, T-Pain, and T-Pain actually recorded a response to it that kind of gave the guys a nod. It's a lot of fun. Um, so anyway, I'm way distracted. Yeah, they did go off. Like, they go hard. And their rhyme schemes are so good. Their flow is so good. Um, and it's just like, I would listen to them even though if they didn't have the gimmick of their age, but you throw their age in there and man, now I'm like, right? Like, these guys are good. They've done MCing and stuff in the past because they know, I don't know, they hit it and they go hard. So a lot of fun. Anyway, let's get to what everybody really came here for, right? Was the let's write some code. Um, I am a little bit distracted today. There's some stuff going on, hopefully before the end of the year, um, that I can tell everybody about here pretty soon that I'm pretty excited about, and can't wait until I can share some information. Um, so um, yeah, there's some stuff going on that I'm really excited about, and hope to be able to talk about soon. But just there's some things that prevent me from doing it right now, and I don't want to get into it too much um, yet. Anyway, um, man, I am um, ah, like, music is a big part of, like, my family and our dynamic and stuff. Just because we've got dancers, and we all enjoy different kinds of music. I'm not a big fan of country. My oldest, she's big into it. And so when I ride in the car with her, I suffer through her listening to country. But one thing that I've always made sure to do is never tell my daughters what they should listen to or what they can listen to or anything like that. I want them to form their own opinions about music. But the other thing is like dance videos. And yeah, there's so many rabbit holes you can go down. Um, but anyway, let's get this navigation stuff done, because once this is done, we can get into we can do the ESLint migration, which I really want to do. And then once we do the ESLint migration, we can start getting into actual xState, which is what this has been about. And one thing I wanted to recognize before the stream, right, is if we look at the Git branch, and the way I have various tools set up, and I like to have my tools set up this way, at home, at work, wherever I am. But I've got my tools set up to always let me know, what branch I'm on and things like that. This branch was started in September 8th. Um, Part of it is, we haven't been doing the typical hours streamed. But one thing I do want to call out, and this has really been driven home by a couple of things that I've been watching lately. So my YouTube feed on my Xbox is that's where I watch YouTube before I go to bed and stuff. So that's where I watch a lot of my programming stuff, my video game stuff, my dance stuff, my music stuff. Like it's an eclectic mix. Um, um, and the algorithm has learned me well. But one of the things that it started to show lately is Bob Martin, Uncle Bob, who wrote the Clean Code book, um, has been putting on some conferences where he's been doing some lectures. Um, and um, so I've been watching like short 4 or 5 minute clips from those lecture series, um, which are very good. Um, I don't always agree with everything that, Uncle Bob says. Um, in fact, I don't agree with a lot of what's in clean code. Um, but I have a lot of respect for him as a programmer because he spent a lot of time thinking about things, right? Um, and one of the things he was talking about was like rewrites and the cost of rewrites. Um, and that's been on my mind lately too. I've been thinking a lot about like code quality and what code quality means. I haven't written an article in a long time, but I am putting finishing touches on an article that I've been writing about what does code quality mean and what does it mean when developers say quality, when product says quality, when your customers say quality, and you know, quite often those three terms mean different things. Um, and yeah, article hype. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah. I'll give you a sneak peek, right? One thing about code quality that um, will show the maturity of a team that you're working on um, is quite regularly the conversation of quality will come up. Um, and um, you can tell the maturity of the team by how the team reacts to the discussion of code quality. Um, so a team that understands quality and understands code quality um, will not instantly reach for testing as a way to solve quality issues, right? Testing is the lowest bar for quality. Um, Testing is a way to ensure that your code does what you think it does, but there are other definitions of quality that testing doesn't cover. And so, if you start having quality discussions, and you instantly just say, yeah, no more features, no more anything. We're going to write unit tests. One, you've been failing because you haven't been writing unit tests, right? Two, that's not really quality. Um, and three, if you think unit test is solving things, that means that you haven't been delivering code that does what you say it does, right? So you haven't even entered into the realm of starting to talk about code quality. But there's another form of code quality that often brings these up, and that form of code quality is the quality that your users or your customers will talk about. Um, and that code quality is often a proxy for you guys sold us something and we're paying way too much for it, is really quite often what that discussion comes down to. Um, and, I've been working on an analogy for this, right? Um, and the analogy that I'm going with for the article um, is when you're discussing quality from a customer's perspective, um, you need to understand what the customer's saying, right? And make sure that you're asking that. But from experience in the past, and I've worked on a lot of teams who've gone through the code quality growing pains, right? Um, Quite often the customer will come to you and they're like, "Man, your quality is not good," right? Um, and a lot of enterprise teams will experience this. I've seen it in many organizations. I've seen it all over the place, right? Your quality is not good. Well, most often they're not interacting with your code, right? And if they are, they're only interacting with APIs that you built. They aren't interacting with inside of the code. Um, so what do they mean, right? Um, and the way I've been describing it is, let's say, rather than building code, let's put this in the realm of like cars, right? And let's say you're a shop and all the engineers you hired know how to build geometros, right? Um, and so you set up your shop, and your shop is designed to build geometros, right? You build the engine blocks, you built the chassis, you build everything, right? Um, but you're producing geometros, right? Your sales department is out there selling, Escalades, right? High-end SUVs, right? You're producing these little three-cylinder cars that get great gas mileage and whatever, right? But so you're producing Metros, you're selling Escalades, your customer buys an Escalade, right? They pay the price for an Escalade, and you give them a Geo Metro. Um, and they come back to you and they're like, this isn't up to quality, right? Um, your Geo Metro doesn't have four-wheel drive. It is not a luxury car, right? You don't have leather interiors. You don't have, right? Like, they're coming back at you like you're missing the bar, right? And this is where, in um, naive teams, right? Inexperienced teams. That's a better way to put it, right? Because naive often has negative connotations, but in this instance, I want naive to mean you don't understand what your customers are asking about, right? You haven't experienced it yet. You don't understand. And so an inexperienced team is like, oh, we need to do our testing better, right? So you go in and you get your automated testing, right? You as the engines are going across the assembly line, you're making sure that the throttles work, right? And then your integration testing. You get people who go and they make sure that when you press the pedal that the engine revs, and when you put it in gear that it goes forward, and when you put it in reverse it goes backwards, right? Those are all the unit tests and integration tests and all of that stuff that you wrote. Um, and you're patting yourself on your back, right? You've got people who are doing road tests, and they're out on different racetracks doing timing trials and all of this stuff to make sure that your vehicle performs the way that you designed it to perform, right? And you're patting yourself on the back thinking that you've improved your quality, and you probably found problems in your process, right? You found bugs using your unit tests, and look at all these bugs we solved, and blah 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 blah. Your customers are still not happy, right? You've tested that your Geo Metro drives, right? You've tested that your engine works, and maybe you tested that your air conditioner, who knows what, right? That your windows roll down, but you've completely missed the point of the quality that your customers are bringing you, because your customers expect Escalades and you're still giving them Metros, right? But you don't understand that, right? There's no way that you can go from a factory that produces Geo Metros to rolling Escalades off the assembly line without retooling your factory, right? You've got to start working on a different engine block. You've got to start working on a different transmission, right? Escalades have four-wheel drive. Geo Metros don't, right? Um, it's a heavier chassis. You've got to start looking at components and bigger tires, and just there's so much there that you're not even in the same ballpark, the same vicinity. And so when your customers are talking quality and when you're talking quality, um, you need to be having more discussions than, oh, we need unit tests, oh, we need integration tests, oh, we need to do better on our on our testing, right? Our QA department needs to do better. um, that is just a tiny tiny bit of the quality discussion, right? And there's another part of quality, um, that if you ignore that part of quality, leads to what we call code rot. And that part of quality is the developer experience in your code. And um, a lot of organizations get this one wrong, right? Because it's just go, 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 sprint, 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 sprint. Um, but we never make the developer experience better. And so you wind up with parts of code that nobody wants to touch because it's so bad, right? That's another part of code quality. And that part of code quality directly impacts like the cost of the code, right? Because it takes longer for the brave soul who's willing to go touch that part of the code to figure out how to make fixes or changes, right? Quite often, changes in that code, um, the tests and everything work here, but you broke something over there, right? That only comes out, maybe a customer finds it or who knows what, right? Um, and so when we talk code quality, there are so many discussions we need to be having. And that that comes back to what we're talking about here, right? This branch was started on September 8th. That means it's been running for 3 months on stream. It's taken us 3 months to get to the point where we're almost done. Um, and granted, it's not as focused as it could have been, right? Nerd sniping and stuff like that. But this is the cost of code, um, that has rotted. We can call it that way, right? We didn't have to make this change. I'll admit that, right? We didn't have to factor out the code store. This was a change that I wanted to make, but look at the cost, right? 3 months running. Um, and this is a very real consideration, and this is a consideration with the developer experience, um, where choices made early on, can impact things down the road to the point where the expense of fixing that can become very expensive. And that's where teams start to talk about rewrites, right? Like the old system is so broken that we need to rewrite it. And there are whole bunches of issues with rewrites. And I've been through a couple of rewrites. I will tell you, I've only been through one successful rewrite. Um, and I've been through a lot. And that successful rewrite was only successful because one, the system it was rewriting, um, was scoped very well. So the scope of what was being rewritten was very focused and very well done. Um, and for people who've worked with me in the past, the only system that I would consider to be a rewrite success, is the system that we worked on at Odessa. Um, so when we, um, what did we call that new system? Was it MAP? I think it was MAP. Um, but it was a way of taking Odessa's legacy system, and part of the reason that they needed to rewrite things is that they had bought code from the auto auction that I was working on, at Brazier's. And Brazier's had done some pretty incredible things that, Odessa wanted to bring in, um, which was a badge of pride for, those of us at Brazier's. The development team I worked on at Brazier's was 4 developers. Um, So there was another Jason, there was myself, there was Owen Meekum, who is part of, he does stuff with ngconf and things like that. You'll probably have seen him in the micro front ends, not microservices. Yeah, the MFE, he does MFE training quite a bit. Very smart person. And then Doug Golder, um, who's also incredibly smart. But the 4 of us, um, worked on this auction system. Um, and it was an advanced auction system. It did some really cool stuff. Like to give you an idea of the level of engineering that we were allowed to do. Um, I wrote a peer-to-peer network for an application that we had at Brazier's. Um, and so when people would be, we had an issue um, where the wireless around Brazier's had problems. And the problems that we had were due to the fact that we were right next to a train track that was right next to it, like a Union Pacific train yard. And one of the things that's interesting is that Union Pacific and the railroad in the US is very powerful. Um, they're able to violate the 1 watt wireless um, for like Wi-Fi regulation that's in the US. So anything commercial or off the shelf, like consumer grade wireless that you have in the US, um, has to be less than a 1 watt transmitter. Union Pacific can violate that, um, because they wirelessly communicate with trains that are moving, along these lines, and so their wireless signal would often overwhelm spots of the lot where people were there. And there was this application um, that we used where they would note all the damage on the vehicle, but the damage also used there were algorithms that would calculate like damage prices and things like that. Um, and there were certain people that were trusted to be able to create proper damage prices and understand, the write up and process like that, and other people that would use their stuff. Um, and so I wrote a peer-to-peer network um, to where if you couldn't connect to a wireless access point, these um, they use tough books. The tough books could communicate with each other still, and they could still share data. So if you had somebody that was at a wireless access point and was getting updates, but then they were connected to people out on the lot who couldn't connect to that access point because they were being overwhelmed by the Union Pacific wireless, they could still, if they could connect to other tough books, they could still share updates and things, right? And somebody writing could be sharing his update across the lot, and then as somebody came into wireless range, that was uploaded. It didn't even have to be the person doing the writing. It would just be uploaded, and then that would be shared not only at your local auction, but that would also go to, I think Brazier's had 7 auctions, 7 or 8 auctions, I can't remember. And so there was a peer-to-peer network that was doing all of this stuff, right? So much fun, right? But that's way above, what Odessa was doing. Um, and it's actually above what I've done at a lot of other places, right? Coming up with the algorithms like, how do you determine if the change made by this guy out here, and it was so much fun. Um, and that's where we came up with like transactional based changes, um, because this person may have changed the paint hours, but another person may have changed body hours for the work estimate, and we can't do like a FIFO or any of the stack based stuff. They have to be transactional based changes because we have to know this person only changed the paint hours, this person only changed the body hours, right? And we don't want to be swamping people when they come into, wireless range, um, you know, let's resolve the conflicts here. So conflict resolution was a big deal. Just a lot of fun stuff like that. So, yeah. Um, anyway, I sniped myself again. Rewrites are expensive. Um, and over the course of my career, and I've been writing software, and I've seen a lot of rewrites. I've only seen one succeed. And again, the reason that it succeeded, they scoped what was being rewritten, and then they isolated that from the system. Um, so no new features were added to that. And they used the strangler pattern, right? So the stuff that was being rewritten was the old legacy code. Um, the very first thing we did is we went in and we just strangled it, right? And if you guys are unfamiliar with the strangler pattern, it's based on a concept. If you've ever been out in the jungle, there's strangler vines that will kill the host tree quite often. Um, and the host tree disappears, but the strangler vines form themselves around the tree and they look like the tree, even after the tree's long dead and gone, because they formed themselves in the shape. That's the idea of the strangler pattern, is that you take the piece and you isolate it and then you strangle it. So you form APIs that behave so that everybody thinks that you're working with the tree, but slowly you're replacing parts of the application that you strangled until all of it's been replaced, right? Um, which leads into like ship of Theseus type philosophical arguments and things like that, which are also fun to have. But I don't want to go down that. Um, I don't want to go down that path right now. Um, but that's the only one that I've been, and it's because it was scoped, and then every new feature was being added outside of the Strangle code and designed to work. So the Strangler could work with the new code, and the new code could work with the Strangled code, but the stuff that was being rewritten was completely isolated, and no new features were going into it. Bug fixes, sure, and things like that, but no new features. So you're not playing catch up with the team that's constantly adding new features. Anyway, that's one thing I do want to point out, right? And as a good responsible engineer, one of the things that you need to be aware of, um, and quite often, when we go into discussions about rewrites, quite often I will be the negative voice in the rewrite because I don't want to do rewrites. There's so many reasons not to do rewrites, and one of the best ones that all businesses understand is cost. But if you want to go in and level up your career as a software engineer, um, understanding um, understanding things like this, the cost of rewrites, the cost of not delivering quality code are important things for you to be able to articulate. Um, and the part of solving these issues are often painful, right? Because quite often, by the time that the organization's willing to recognize that you've got a problem, that problem is to the point of, things are on fire, the company's going to burn down, right? I'm exaggerating here, right? But it's progressed to a point where the fix is not easy. Um, and so as an engineer, your job is to understand how we can make fixes that aren't going to cost more than the problem is costing. And so that's why I wanted to point this out, right? The fact that we've been on this branch for over 3 months, um, well, it's a sign that one, I nerd snipe myself. Two, you guys are excellent at nerd sniping me. But three, there is a very real and expensive cost to making rewrites like this. Um, anyway, lots of talking. Um, my voice is starting to get a little bit sore. Um, not so much code. Let's see if we can knock out this code, and then I think I might end for the day. But let's move this update selected from navigation, update next to focus. The one we want to start with is navigate to cell. Um, navigate to cell is kind of the entry point to all of the navigation. So this grid store, and this is one thing that I need to figure out. I'm not sure what actually causes this. The grid store hazards using the name signal, right? And that we're using an internal name for signal. Um, and we're using it from I'm curious if it has to do with the zone.js stuff here. Because I think we might be zoneless here. are we zoneless? App.config. We are zoneless. I wonder, because the other places where I've seen this issue are in zoneless, but we're referring to RxJS and then Zone.js. And the only place that we have to use Zone.js right now is with Cypress, because Cypress still uses Webpack, and so it can't do zoneless. Um, or at least I'm not aware. Let me rephrase that. I'm not aware of a way to do zoneless yet. But we can see that it is Zone.js at 0.15.0, and then that's referring to the Angular core, right? And here we are referring to Angular core also, but I wonder if it's this interaction between an experimental zoneless and a, so that's something that I want to investigate. Um, but it compiles just fine. I really think that this is just potentially an issue with the types, right? The way the types are done. But let's focus, right? With methods. Um, we want our state, and let's go ahead and import our with methods. There we go. And so we're going to add our navigate to cell method. I actually think I want to comment this. And let's create our own navigate to cell where we'll copy stuff that we just brought over. So navigate to cell. And navigate to cell, we've written it as an effect. And the reason that we've written it as an effect, um, and that's fine. The reason we've written it as an effect is that we're using reactive stuff, right? And in component store, an effect is a way to get something that we can pipe off of. So we're grabbing the navigation observable, which is a direction and a cell state. And so I think we're going to have to do something similar. So we're grabbing the latest from the grid, and we can do that. We can do that easily. So we don't need an RxJS stream here. And then we're using the navigation piece that we pull in along with the grid and creating puzzle mode. And we destructure direction and cell state from the navigation object passed in. And then we call update selected. And if there was an error, then we just, we log an error. I don't actually think we need, I don't think we need an Rx method here. Because we aren't switch mapping here. And yeah, I think we can get away with just doing, one of the things I want to do is just create a type for this. So type of navigation or navigate to cell event, right? We're gonna create this type down here that we can use. And so this type is, yep, whichever AI grabbed it, It was Copilot. So now we've got our navigate to cell event. So here we can just say this is our navigation, and it's a navigate to cell event. Right? Um, so there we go. So we need that, and we need that. I think that all matches up. I think we're complaining here. Yeah, because it's empty. And here we're complaining because we aren't using state, and here we're complaining because we aren't using navigation. So we're good. Um, and then we've got some extra stuff up above. I think if I save, this should go away. No, it won't because of that, because of the errors. Maybe. Oh, it did. Okay, never mind. Prettier took a little while to kick in, but we're good. So we've now got our navigation event. Um, so we can grab grid from the state. We can grab creating puzzle mode from the state. Um, so let's go ahead. Actually, I'm fine with this line. So that line I'm good with. Um, and I actually liked how it was destructuring the state, but I don't know that we want to do that. So we can say const state, or not state, grid uh, equals state dot grid. And we can also say creating puzzle mode equals creating puzzle mode. And now it's just complaining that I'm not using any of these variables that I set up. We're good there. Um, I shouldn't do this. I don't normally do this, and I don't want to introduce, patterns that I don't normally do. Code consistency is a very real thing. Um, so now we've grabbed everything to this point right here, right? So the next call is just this update selected from navigation, and then handling the errors. So I'm curious if update selected from navigation can throw an error. Well, let's go to the old store. Let's go ahead and just delete this because that's what we've been doing. And we want update selected from navigation. Let's bring that over. So update selected from navigation is being called inside of here. So the solution I've been doing in most places is to just add another with methods. Um, and that allows me to have, because we're in a very compositional, right, like signal store is very compositional and very functional. So me calling with methods here means that when I get the state here, we've got whatever I add to it, right? So this is where we'll add our update. Let's go ahead and do the same thing we did. Let's comment this out. I update selected from navigation. I do want to just pull that out, right? That's what's helping me um, understand what I've done and what I haven't done. Um, and so now what we can do is we can just add this, and we're using the underscore to make sure that it's internal to the signal store. It's kind of a notation that signal store picked up as being private. And we expect a couple of things. We expect a direction, a cell state, a grid, and whether or not we're creating puzzle mode. Um, which is what we call here. There's a lot that we're passing in. We might be able to refactor this, but I don't want to do too much refactoring before we finish it. So grid direction. And then we want cell state, right? And then it wants grid is a cell state array, multi-dimensional array, and then creating puzzle mode, right? And that's a boolean. Um, there's an interesting discussion we could have here. Um, and I think it's a good place to have it. There is something that I do want to refactor here. So we'll write this first, and then we'll discuss the issue, right? So the code is just find next cell to navigate, and then we navigate to that cell. So we need to find that function find next cell. So here's our find next cell to focus. And this is just a function, so we're going to drop it below everything. Does that match up at the bottom? It does not. I've got some mismatched. So this one here matches with that one, which means we're missing one more parenthesis. No, we're not. It's there. Never mind. It was scrolled over just enough so that my code looked like this, and I was confused, right? I was like, why is that semicolon there? We're good. Never mind. I'm trying to solve a problem that's not there. So find next cell to focus. And of course, it's complaining that, hey, find next cell to focus is a copy. That's fine. But find next cell to focus takes in a direction, a state, a cell state, and then it's got this flag on the end. Hey, are we in creating puzzle mode? And where do we use that? So we're using it in a recursive call. So this loop right here is the piece that's different, right? This is why we've added the flag. So I want to take this and make two methods out of it. So what I want is a puzzle mode, find next cell to focus, and I want just a regular find next cell to focus, right? So the whole reason for this is if we're in puzzle mode, if the next cell is read only, we can't move to it. But we're going to take this out, which means we can now take this out. But we're in a slightly broken state, right? And let's grab the partial get next cell status. or get next cell state, um, which relies on get next cell state. Boom, we will grab these, right? Um, and so partial get next cell state takes a grid state, takes a direction modifier, and it returns the cell state that get next cell state returns. So we pass in the grid, the cell state, and the direction modifiers. Um, and what this does is it looks at the row and the column from the direction modifiers, and then it just returns the grid and that, which means this can actually return undefined. Because if this doesn't exist, then this doesn't exist. So we've got an undefined here that we aren't handling here, right? Because this can return. Oh, interesting. So we're partially applying the grid, and we're partially applying the grid and the direction modifiers. And that in turn allows us to use the cell state on it. Very interesting. So we set up this partial application of get next cell state. But the interesting thing here is that we recognized that it could be null. Um, so we take in the current cell state and we use the modifier. Um, I think we could make it so this can't return null by just returning cell state here. What does that do for us? Like we had some issues when we were working through the code here, and I think the issues came down to the fact that, and this is an interesting problem we've got, um, is that our grid cell state plus row modifier, this could potentially be null, which is why we've got that question mark there, right? Because it doesn't actually care here. Um, why would that be? So if we were to deconstruct this, right, the row is the grid cell state plus row modifier, right? But this is saying that it is a cell state. But this is possible. It's possible for this to be undefined, right? And the problem we have, and the reason we have this in here is we're using an optional chaining operator. I'm not sure that I like this. Because it's hiding something. Like this should technically be this, right? Which probably breaks this, right? How does it break this one? Or is it just that this isn't being used? Because we are checking for undefined here. Oh, and if we're in puzzle mode, we just don't care. We just give it the next cell. So if the next cell is not null and we're not in creating puzzle mode and the next cell is read only, right? So in creating puzzle mode, we can change the values of anything, but in the non-puzzle mode, we need to skip over read only cells. This is broken right here. And next cell is read only. Then we go through. Um, so if we've got a read only cell and our next cell is read only, then we get the next cell. Otherwise, and this is where we're handling that undefined. So we were handling it in the find next cell to focus, but there's a problem here, right? Very interesting. Very, very interesting. See, I think we could solve this by doing that. And then by destructuring just a little bit to make the code a little bit easier to read, right? Because our row is our grid with our cell state row plus the modifier. And what we could do is we could just say, hey, if row is null or undefined, right? If row is nullish, just return cell state. Boom. Right. So that solves one problem. And then the next thing we could do is we could return row cell state plus column modifier. But if this is undefined, then we also just return cell state, right? Which then gets rid of this, which now this absolutely returns a cell state. And this is the problem with like nullish operators, right? Um, the other thing we could do, and this is something that I want to take a look at in the future, is using like a functional monad, like a maybe or an optional or something like that, right? Um, but now this function is much safer, and because this function now only returns a cell state, our get next cell is guaranteed to be a cell state. So we don't need this check. Really, all we need now is just we need to check that if the next cell is read only, then we get the cell after that one, right? And that's basically what this is doing. Um, and that's why we're using a partial application here, because we've got these modifier values where we take in the direction, and um, we can apply those directions down here, right? So this partial function, what it's doing is it's a function that allows us to partially apply the grid and the directional modifiers, right? And the directional modifiers are up, down, left, right. So up would be a one or a zero in the row and a one in the column, because that or a negative one in the column, because that's going to move us up in the array, right? Um, a right is going to be a one in the row and a zero, right? Down is a zero and a one, and then a negative one and a zero. Um, so we're able to take the grid that we've got, apply the directional modifiers down here, and then this function just returns a cell state. And what we've done is basically the only place where row will be undefined, right, is if we're at the top and we're adding a negative row modifier, so we're trying to go up at the top, or if we're at the bottom and we're adding a positive row modifier, so we're trying to go down at the bottom. In that case, in either case, we can't find a new row, so let's just give them back the cell state that we've got, right? And then Same with columns, right? Columns, the only way this will be undefined is if we're at the left edge and we're trying to go left, or if we're at the right edge and we're trying to go right. In the both of those cases, we should just give back the same cell, which was what this code was doing right here, right? We were checking for null. Um, so we've simplified that code too. Um, we are checking to make sure that our direction is a legit navigation direction. Um, we are also, using our partials. We're partially applying this method. So we're partially applying the grid and the direction because that's not going to change inside of this recursive call, right? And it's actually not a recursive call. Um, a recursive call would be calling find next cell to focus, but we optimized it by partially applying. So the grid will always be the same. The direction we're going will always be the same. So this while loop only cares about the cell that we're applying it on, right? So we get the next cell, and then if that next cell, right, like the cell next to us, say we're going right, right, we're going to the right, and the cell to the right of us is read only. Well, the only way that that cell can be read only is if we're not in puzzle mode. Um, well, if it's part of the puzzle, that's the only way that that cell can be read only. Um, so if we have the read only cell next to us, we don't want to tell the grid, hey, focus on that read only cell. It can't do that. So we want to look to the cell next to that read only cell. And so, we're just reading over and over again. Um, at some point, we're going to run out of cells that we can get. Um, and there's a problem here. So there is a problem. This doesn't work. This is now an infinite loop. And the way this would be an infinite loop is let's say we've got this row, right? And we've got an empty space here, and then we've got, a 2, 3, a 4, a 5, yeah. So let's pretend that this is our Sudoku row, right? We're focused here, and we want to move to the right. And let's say that these are puzzle cell modes, right? Um, well, the way I've changed it is, right, we'll move to the 2. 2 is read only. We move to the 3. 3 is read only. 4 is read only. 5 is read only. 6 is read only. 7 is read only. 8 is read only. 9 is read only. We can't move to the right past 9. So we return 9. 9 is read only. And now we're in an infinite loop and we're going to exhaust our stack. But even if we didn't exhaust our stack, we're stuck in an infinite loop, right? Um, because once we get here, we can't move on. And really, we don't even need to make this change or this check. What we could fix this. We could say while next cell does not equal cell state. No, that doesn't solve it. we have to use the undefined here, and that sucks. This is a place where like an optional would be really useful. Um, but um, we're not in that state. And my fix was too early. And so here, while it does not equal null, right? So the reason this works, right, is that when we get to the 9 at this point, um, it's going to return null or undefined, right? Not null, but so not equals null compares to any nullish value, so null or undefined. Not triple equals null will only compare to null. Um, so we're just saying, hey, if you're not nullish, um, and the next cell is read only, then get the next cell. Well, if the next cell isn't read only, then we're going to fall here, and then we'll have a next cell defined, so we'll return that next cell. Otherwise, we'll have a nullish value, null or undefined, right? In our case, it'll be undefined. And then we return the cell state that was passed in. So by the time we get out here, we get the nullish value of undefined, then it's just going to give this cell as a cell to navigate to. That's why we've got this code in place. Let's find next cell to focus. Puzzle mode find next cell to focus is actually much simpler. We don't need the partial outside of the fact that that's the only place that this is called, right? Creating puzzle mode is always false in this case, which means that this is actually not useful, right? Because it's always false, so we'll never get into the while loop that's calling get next cell over and over again. And now it wants me to make next cell const, right? We'll fix that. And I was going to inline this, but if I do the inline, this ternary doesn't work. So we've simplified this code too, but now we've got an issue up here to where, well, let's add in our update selected from navigation, right? So there's this, and then what we want to do is we can actually move this line. Oh, I can't. Navigate to next cell doesn't work. But what we can do is we can just say, hey, const next cell equals creating puzzle mode, right? And if we're in creating puzzle mode, then we're going to use direction, cell state grid, or we're going to find the next cell to focus, right? So we've taken our flag out of the code down here, which focuses these, right? We don't need this while loop and all the checks in puzzle mode, right? Puzzle mode, we just get the next cell and we move on. Um, and really, we could inline this. Um, so um, we could say that the next cell, we inline the partial. This is harder to read. Um, I'm going to leave them separated just because it's harder to read. The compiler will optimize this away. Um, but one thing, going back to our discussion about code quality, we don't write code for the computer or the compiler or, to be the smartest person writing the code or whatever. We write code for ourselves and for people who come along later, right? Um, what I had when I inline this is much more difficult to read, right? You know, if we write code like, um, return, create, partial, right? And that returns a function, and then, we pass in some stuff here. People see this and they're like, what the hell is going on, right? This is not, not everybody's that way. But if most of our code is written to be, you know, simple function calls like this, even if you know what this means, you stop and you're like, wait, what's going on? Right? And so one of the things that we can do, and this goes back to code quality, right? Is we can make our code easier to read. Even though this requires more lines, it doesn't matter. The compiler is going to optimize it away, right? The transpiler may optimize it away, it may not. But the interpreter, right? So we're talking like V8 and Chrome-based stuff and Trident in like, well, I don't even know if Trident's used anymore. But whatever the Safari engine is, and Gecko for Mozilla, right? Um, they're going to optimize this away when they go and interpret this and turn it into machine code. Um, so the only reason you would write that um, that way, I don't know. Maybe your team is used to it, and if that's the case, do it that way. I would tend to argue that most teams are used to seeing function calls this way, and as soon as you make them more complicated than that, it slows down your reading of the code. Um, and that is a measurement of code quality, right? Because developers spend way more time reading code than writing code in most instances. Um, and so in those cases, we need to make sure that the code they're reading is easy to read. Um, so the last thing we need to do is we've got another function, navigate to cell. Um, and I believe this is the last one. Um, Maybe. But again, we're going to add this as its own method with methods. Um, well, let's show the different ways, right? So people can see it. Um, I do need to be cognizant of time. Luckily, luckily the way that I'm speaking, where I'm not projecting a lot right now, has been good on my voice. Um, but let's take a look at what happens if we do this, right? So immediately this breaks. Um, and this is one of the other ways that actually that's not what we want to remove. That's what we want to remove. So here we need to surround that, and then we need to return that. Boom. And now it made a mess because of me. Um, let's clean up that mess. So here's my function. Ugh, what did I do? Okay, that it does it. So if I instead do return and then do that, there we go. What doesn't it like about this? Left side, oh, that should be a semicolon, right? And the comma should have been here. There we go. And why did we do this? Well, we did this because inside of here, we can also um, add a function. And this function, we can call it, um, I think, yeah. So there we go. There's the function. It equals this. Give it our arrow notation. Oops. Um, Now we've got navigate cell, right? Next to focus is our grid, row, and column. And then this is just state dot update selected. And then it is state dot update next to focus, right? And that doesn't exist yet. But then inside of here, what we can do is we can add navigate to cell. And then down here, we can also call navigate to cell, right? Um, so that adds that in. And this is two ways to do it, right? I tend to not do it this way because it adds more functions, right? And it becomes more difficult to read, um, in my opinion. But either way works, right? I tend to prefer doing it this way with the state, and then, we just add a method to the state. And we can add as many of these with methods as we want. So let's pull this out again. We'll put this in here. And we don't want that anymore. And we don't want this. And we don't need that. And that should fix this up. No, it shouldn't, because um, this needs to go down here. Boom. And so now we've added this method back. The next thing we can do is we can add our paren back here, and our paren back. Actually, we don't need it there. So now we don't need this, and we don't need that. And that should fix it. Oh, yeah, we don't have that anymore, and we need to add the state here. But I tend to find this easier to read. Um, right, we're still adding stuff to the top, but the nice thing about this is I could take this with methods and extract it into a function, right? Or a couple of these with methods and extract them into functions, and we'd be fine. Um, I've broken something here. We got this with methods is missing a paren. There we go. So we're good there. We've got that. So we just need update next to focus. Great. That happens to be the last thing that we needed to move. Um, and again, with methods, state, boom, and here we're going to add this in. Let's comment this out. And really, our update next to focus uses a cell state, so it should be at the top in here. We've got update selected, update cell value, update next to focus. So really, we're just setting the next to focus, which great. That's easy to do. We can just say, hey, update next to focus is that, and then we can just patch state and use state, and we're going to patch it with some values. And the values we're going to patch it with are the row and the column. So really, we could just do this const row column equals cell state. And then here we just do row column. Okay. Did I miss something here? Next to focus. That's what we're missing. So we need an outer object. And our outer object will have our next to focus. Boom. That takes our row and our column. Why doesn't it like our column? There we go. The semicolon was a problem. I think that was inserted by Prettier when it reformatted everything. So now we've got our state patched properly. So our update next to focus is done. Our update selected from navigation is done. So now we just need to clean this up. All of these other methods are all good. There's definitely some stuff that we could do to do better, but let's go ahead and clean this up. We don't need it. Clean this up. Don't need that. And let's get to the point where I believe it was here. So now we can say that we're just calling state dot update selected from navigation. We're going to use our direction, our cell state, and creating puzzle mode. So that takes care of that. We were handling an error, but I don't think we need to do that anymore. I think that error was added because of other issues. So that moves all of this stuff over. So now what we can do is we can just add another feature, and we're done, and with good time. So sniping myself at the beginning was a bit of a good help, right? Um, but us go ahead and create our feature here. Um, so our grid store is here. In our grid store, we're just going to add a new TypeScript file. And one thing I think I would like to take a look at is um, potentially creating an NX generator, um, where you could say, factor out feature, and it could read through your signal store, and then you could pick the methods that you want to move and name the feature, and it would do it for you. I think that would be a fun thing to explore in the future. But this is keyboard navigation feature.ts, right? And so we're going to export a um, with keyboard navigation, um, export function, and it helps if you spell it right, with keyboard navigation, um, and we're just going to say that we are going to return a signal store feature. Yep, import that. And so right off the bat, we need a type, and we'll worry about this in a second. So there's our type. Um, but now we can grab from our grid store all of these with methods. Um, boom. And we can put them here. That's one part down. And then we can replace them all with keyboard navigation and import that. Now we've got our feature, and then we just need our supporting functions and our supporting type, right? So here are our supporting features, or our supporting functions, and then we just need this type. And there we go. And we'll add our type to the top of the file. And so now we've created our new feature. Our signal store feature needs a generic. That's absolutely right. There's our generic that fixes that problem. But we need some functions, right? So update selected. So really, did update selected come? We can say update, or we want methods. And we want update selected. That's a cell state void. I actually think that might break. We also want some state, and our state is going to be a cell state, or not cell state. It's going to be a grid state. And that's going to fix all of this stuff down here, right? Yeah. I've got, I need to import grid state, but that should fix all of that. But our grid store, I think, is complaining. No, that works. So one of these, oh, with manage selected, has update selected in it, huh? It does. It very much does. So we're good. I thought that with the underline here, but it's the theta signal. So everything else in this file has been copied over. Um, and we've pretty much destroyed this file. Like if we go take a look, the old store, um, we've taken most of it out. Um, so what we can do instead um, is take this old store and I'm just going to delete it. Um, so refactor, delete. There we go. So it's now gone. Um, so now all that's left is commit stuff. Let's go ahead and do that. So we added well, actually, let's unstage this first. And let's just say that we removed old store because we don't need it anymore. And then we can stage these. And so we just added the with keyboard navigation feature. Um, so added with keyboard navigation feature. And we're finally in a state where I was hoping to be a while ago, but we're in a good state. Um, I'm willing to bet that things are still broken because we did change quite a bit. Um, so let's go see, right? Um, the first thing we can do is just run our linter, our tests, and our component tests. And we'll just see what breaks, right? I know some stuff is going to break, or at least I hope I do. Um, I always worry when we make changes and nothing breaks. Me when I'm not in Wisconsin. I've never been to Wisconsin. Um, I'm not even sure. Like, as you know, as a cheese lover, Wisconsin seems like it would be a fun state. Um, but I don't know anything about Wisconsin outside of the fact that they wear cheese hats, right? Um, and I think they roll cheese down a hill, but that could be a European thing that I'm conflating with Wisconsin because of cheese. I don't remember. I'll be honest with that. Um, but other than that, that's about all I know about Wisconsin, right? I can tell you all about Idaho, California, and Utah, but a lot of the East Coast stuff I don't know a whole lot about. So we've got some problems with our keyboard navigation. Um, we've got an issue with cell value changed not being a function. But other than that, we're passing, which is pretty good. But I did rework the way that keyboard navigation works, so I may have broken some stuff. So that's one thing to take a look at. The other thing to take a look at is our unit tests. There are a few of those that are broken. So our linters look like they're broken. Um, our Sudoku tests, um, that's a warning. And this warning, I wish I could clean up, but So we're looking at a grid store stub. Um, we might be able to fix that one. Is that really the only issue? Is that really? Could that really? I mean, could the issues be that small? So we've got components testing. The linting will clean up when we upgrade the linter. Um, what kind of unit test did I write? Oh man. In this one we've got spectator unit tests. We've got angular. Um, we've got um, what is it? Angular testing. Let's look at the package JSON. It'll remind me of the name. Testing library. We're using testing library with Angular. Um, we've also got just regular unit tests in here. And we've got some component tests. Um, and we've got Storybook in here. Um, there was a lot of stuff we did early on to just do different kinds of tests. One of the things that we need to do, um, and I was expecting to have to do this, is we added this feature, right? We added a whole bunch of features, but those features are not tested. Um, oh, interesting. Grid computed feature. Why would this one? We got signal store, grid state. Compute regions. I'm curious. This looks like our with grid computed. Looks like where we're getting that error from. With grid also has it, but it uses with grid computed, which has the issue. Grid state doesn't have that issue. The grid store helpers. This is the test, so we probably need to fix up. The undo redo feature doesn't have the problem. Grid errors don't have the problem. Manage selected don't. Keyboard navigation does not. Pencil marks does not. Puzzle mode does not. Reset does not. And solver does not. So whatever I'm doing in here is what is actually causing this error for the signal. The signal number. So the state we're bringing in is just a grid state, and we're using this everywhere. I don't know. We can take a look at that. I want to. Well, I need to end here soon. So let's run the components test and then the Sudoku. Let's run this one and just see what the issue is here. So npm exec, and then I can paste that. And let's add. I don't need a watch. We'll fix these up. Um, we'll fix these up next time. So yeah, um, we've got some issues in here. So three are passing, or three failed, two passed, right? And like these are Angular testing library tests. Allow signal write is deprecated. We might take a look at that. Um, this is where I wish I had warp, because with warp you can jump to the top of where a command ran. Really cool shell. Um, And, maybe the PowerShell will catch up to it eventually. So here we go. Select the grid component tests. Right, and the button host tests. And the grid store. The grid store has no exported member, no cell selected. So we'll have to take a look at that. No cell to focus. Cell value changed. I don't think we have cell value changed anymore. So some of these tests in the store, we're gonna have to move out. I want to see if we can clean up like this button host really quick. Um, let's go ahead and just add a quick watch to this. And let's look at button host. So button host components. And let's grab the test file here. So it is saying the grid store should just be type of. And then creating puzzle mode. Grid game one. That's right there. Creating puzzle mode. Object literal only specify known properties, and creating puzzle mode does not exist in partial type flip grid game one creating puzzle mode. Um, I do I even need this anymore? I don't think I need this. Let's just comment this out and comment that out. Oh, I do need this, but I think I can just mock it like this. Yeah, that should be fine. Um, so we are calling cell value changed in the button host component ts. Um, the cell value changed does not exist. I think it became update. Um, I will have to take a look at this. I need to end for sure. So I was hoping this would be an easy fix. It doesn't look like it will. We'll kick off with this next time. Because this definitely does not exist anymore. We did away with it in our refactor. Um, so we'll have to take a look at that. But thank you everybody for being here. Thank you guys for putting up with my raspy voice. I'm gonna go rest it. Actually, what I'm heading to right now, and the reason I've got to end on time is I've got to go get my haircut. Um, so I'm heading to get my haircut. And So next time you see me, hopefully it'll look better. Hey, thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate it, and thank you for being here. Um, and putting up with me going on random tangents and stuff like that. You know, I guess it's a sign. Like gray hair is a sign I'm getting old, but the random, yeah, let's just meander through who knows what, right? That's another sign that we're that maybe I'm getting a bit old. Hey, thank you, Ola. So I appreciate that, Marcus. I try to share things that are useful to everybody, right? But sometimes, right, like the hip hop discussions, it's just I'm human. I love hip hop, so um, sometimes I'm just going to talk about things I like. But thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you next time. Um, it should be Tuesday. Like I keep saying that. I don't think that there's anything going on this week Tuesday night. Let me just check my calendar. I did it last time though too, and I was unaware of um, Tuesday. Yeah, I don't have anything Tuesday evening, so um, we're looking good. So it should be Tuesday. I will make sure to send a message if I can't. But other than that, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. And I look forward to seeing you guys all next time. So have a good evening.